Welcome to the AI and Local Government Network meeting. Excited to have you with us here today and watching this video. If you join us live via YouTube, whatever the case may be, excited that you're with us here today. And this is an amazing conversation. So please make sure you watch to the end because this is really insightful if you're looking to adopt and integrate AI within local government. Before we get started, you know what to do already. Please go ahead and hit subscribe, hit the bell for notifications because on this channel, we produce videos about once a week talking about the practical uses of AI for local government. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, hit the thumbs down button twice. And of course, if you have any questions or things like that of the content you see, feel free to leave those questions or comments below in those comments. Relevant links and whatnot are going to be shown in the description below, so please go ahead and check that out as well. And for now, let's get started on this month's AI in Local Government Network. How to get started here. I know people are still logging in and still joining here, so we'll get started though with the interest of time. Wanted to first just say thank you again for all of those of you who are watching this, who have watched it on my YouTube channel as well too. Do appreciate the support that you've given my efforts the last, I guess, year and a half now. It seems like eternity. I think there's dog years and there's AI years, and AI years seem to be twice the amount of dog years, I think. But really appreciate that. Want to introduce to you our guest speaker for today. We've not done this before, but excited for this one in particular. If you're on LinkedIn, like I think a lot of you guys are, and a lot of you gals are, then you are very familiar with, or you should be familiar with Lori Mazur. She is one of those thought leaders on the AI space and someone that I've just got a lot of value from her content. Very practical, very use case driven and things like that. The reality is there's a lot of fluff out there when it comes to AI and these different, what I call AI influencers or things like that. And Lori's work kind of just cuts through the noise and puts things in perspective and some real practical takeaways. Like every single one of her posts that I come across is something I can learn and glean from. It's not hype. It's not the it's not the hype cycle or things like that or fluff that you could probably get with any kind of generic ChatGPT written post. And I don't know, Laura, if you use ChatGPT to write your posts. If you do, great. I do the same thing too. But I really appreciate just how much thought and energy you put into these posts, the perspectives you've given, at least just from viewing your content and things like that, and also the focus you have on AI with a human touch. I think that's something that really resonates with me as someone within the public sector is balancing the need for that human touch and understanding that AI is a great tool, but communities and cities are built on human relationships, not necessarily on the technology we use. We can use technology to augment that and help that out, but at the end of the day, it's about building relationships with our community and our residents and our guests. So, Lori, excited to have you with us here today. Excited to hear more about your company and things like that you have. So I'm gonna kick it over to you. And as we go about this, please, folks, feel free to throw stuff in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat, and we'll have a little bit of a Q&A afterwards as well too with Lori. But would love to first hear about your work, how you got started in AI, your company that you launched as well too, and then AI with a human touch.
Absolutely. I'm going to share my slides so that I have a little guide as we go through this presentation. I think I need to start every Monday morning. Micah, if you could just do that PR statement. I feel I turned off the camera because I was blushing so much. So thank you very much. Sometimes when you're talking on social media, it feels like you are talking to an audience of one. And so it really makes me feel good to know that some of the content I put out there is helpful to people, because that's really my goal. I spend time, and I call this talk humans of AI, because what good are machines if there aren't humans that it's serving? Both you as the administrators of government services throughout the United States, as I understand from looking at where many of you are coming from today, but also in serving the people who are citizens of our country. This is a pretty important week in the US for citizens. And so I just want to commend and applaud the work that you do every day to help people navigate the complexities of life. And by way of introduction, I think Micah covered a bit of it, but I do want to talk to you a little bit about my mission about teaching AI with a human touch. I did not start in artificial intelligence. If you asked me 2 years ago if this is what I would be doing for my career, I would have had absolutely no idea, right? The world changes and I have changed with it. And my background is that I was trained as an architect. I practiced architecture in the public sector for many years. And then I was recruited, I should say the private sector for many years. I was recruited by NYU to lead their planning and design office in the early 2000s. And that led me on a 25-year path to working with all kinds of institutions, both in the private and the public sector. So the last official job I had was as the vice president of administration. I called it the vice president of everything that breaks within the City University of New York at Hunter College. And so this was a state entity, despite the fact that it says city in it. My boss was the governor. And so I think I understand what kinds of challenges you might be facing. I know just to get a basic contract for, something like Dropbox, which in the public sector might be a really easy thing to do. In the private sector might be easy to do. In the public sector was like a 5-year project, right? And so with AI accelerating like light years, I also just want to let you know that you're not behind. I work with hundreds of companies, thousands of organizations. These are just a few of them. So my work crosses sectors. You'll find that a lot of the companies that I work with are in the design construction space. That's just because that's my network. That's how people find me. I've also worked with companies in advertising, Minted, which is a company that helps artists distribute their work, and home goods, and market research company. So it's kind of crosses the gamut. And what I want to say is everybody is wondering what everybody else is doing, right? I can't point to a single company and say like this is a best practice, right? Everybody is figuring this out in real time. Some of the early adopters have had, major failures in systems or built systems that have been replaced. So just feel good knowing that you're in the right place at the right time, and that the best thing that you can do in this moment is to just get as knowledgeable as possible, try tools, make mistakes, and we'll talk about creating a safe playground, both for yourself and your organizations. I wanted to start with some of the myths that I hear often, and I'm kind of guessing these might be some that you hear too. People have many, many excuses for why they do not want to try or implement AI in their companies. And regardless of all the statistics that you might see about adoption levels, show up at your local birthday party, barbecue, and ask people if they are using AI at work. And I'm going to tell you that 99% of them are not, right? So we are still at the very early stages. One of the things people tell me is that young people are going to bring this tech savviness into the organization, right? That is what we've seen with every other technology. Young people pick it up, social media, a perfect example, right? And they filter it up into the higher levels of the organization. AI is the exact opposite. The people who benefit from using AI tools are those who are seasoned, who have experience, who recognize what the right answer might look like, right? Who are able to curate, not necessarily have to develop all the content, might be used to reviewing drafts of things done by interns or employees, right? And putting that final touch and quality control on top of it. Number two, the myth is the IT team will figure this out. And I will tell you, IT teams have been just as blindsided as everybody else. Most people who studied computer science did not study deep learning. Most people really did not even know the term generative AI until 2 years ago. And most IT teams are also in the same learning curve as non-technical employees. I keep jumping to the truth. I want the truth. The strategy myth. Everybody is putting together an AI council. Yes, we want this to be a democratic and strategic process. But the fact is, this is a tactical application. There's no strategy needed to get started using AI. As many of you know, you can pick up an off-the-shelf tool, and we'll talk about privacy in a minute because that's the next one that people are very concerned about. Obviously, there are many, many issues. I'm sure you are aware of all of them: privacy, security, bias, energy, right? Privacy is usually the one that keeps people from trying out tools, right? Many people have banned ChatGPT in their company because they don't think their data is safe. And that's just not entirely true. We can create a safe playground. Being afraid is good, right? There are many things to be afraid of. And I ask people to keep both parts, that like optimism and pessimism, both equally present in your organization as you're evaluating tools. But it doesn't need to come at the expense of privacy. Most of these applications have privacy toggles. You can turn them off so that you're not training the model. And then there are many ways of anonymizing your data, making sure that you're not putting in personal identifiable information, HIPAA protected, FERPA protected data. Okay. So that's where we begin. What are the organizations getting it right doing? They are recognizing that this is a general purpose technology. I kind of compare it to the era of the spreadsheet, right? Remember, those of you who are my age, remember Lotus Notes. Those of you who might be a little bit younger might think about Microsoft Excel. Like, there's pretty much nothing that you do within your organization that doesn't involve using a spreadsheet today. So I want people to think about AI as the equivalent of a spreadsheet, right? Rather than focusing on these enterprise level use cases, which, absolutely, they're going to be there. But more importantly, this is a tool to get in the hands of every single person, because everybody's going to use it differently. If you like writing, don't use AI for writing. If you like doing math, don't use AI for doing math, right? Use it to fill in the gaps with where you don't have strengths, or where you might want to do something that you can automate rather than having to repeat the same thing over and over again. So I will give you now just a little bit of an overview of what I do. And I will tell you that I do not do consulting. The reason I don't do consulting is that what I found is that you can't talk about AI if you haven't used AI, right? Those conversations end up being pretty fruitless if you haven't made a picture of a goat doing yoga with an AI model, right? I think once you use it, right? Once you use it, even for things that seem silly, going, putting together a shopping list, like doing something with your kids, right? Until you really use it, you don't understand both the opportunities and the pitfalls. So I teach hands-on learning classes to people first, including the C-suite, right? And this gets back to who are going to be the people who use AI best, the ones who have the most experience and the most knowledge and understanding. I teach an 8 to 10 hour course that every employee can take, and it takes them from knowing absolutely nothing about AI, these are mostly non-technical leaders, to being what we call a citizen developer, being able to build a no-code or a low-code application that solves a business problem for you, right? Not being dependent on the IT team to buy a software solution. We start with a foundation. So the first course is all about foundational knowledge, understanding the lingo so that leaders can feel confident talking to technical teams, right? And feel like they are using the proper terminology and that they really understand what's happening under the hood, right? Why do we call it a black box, right? How do these models work? What does statistics have to do with language, right? These are the kinds of questions and answers that we try and provide people in the first class. The second class, I always teach everybody image generation, even lawyers. And I have to tell you, I've had some of the best artists come out of the law profession. I think it's important to demonstrate the power of language and what it does in terms of breaking down the skills barrier, and also introduce the idea of play into learning. We know that play introduces both your serotonin and your not melatonin, that's going to put you to sleep. It introduces serotonin, which helps you to learn better, right? So we can have fun with AI. Everything doesn't need to be serious life and death use cases. The next thing we do, and also the reason I do media, is it gives you a chance to talk about some of those sticky issues around copyright, right? Which I think are copyright, deep fakes, right? All of those kinds of ethical issues that come up really most prevalently when you're using an AI image generator. Third class, we talk about large language models. I usually have people just use one tool, ChatGPT, Claude, just pick one, really doesn't matter. But we look at how we create content and we use the large language model as a thought partner. So going beyond just write me an email, we really use personas. We use a technique called tree of thoughts, which comes out of Google DeepMind in terms of being able to branch out different thought processes, bring them together with summarization, run scenarios. And I find that this really helps everybody to feel like they've got, a sidekick, right? Something, an entity, I don't even know what to call it, that you can bat ideas around with before you get to the point of batting those ideas around with a human. And I think of this not as a way of replacing humans, but a way of supplementing, right? How many of us sit and work by our desk at our desk by ourselves? And to answer your question, Micah, about do I write using AI? Absolutely. I used to write everything like in a notes file, and I would like wordsmith it, and then I would like finally put it out. I write everything right in ChatGPT now. I've built myself 2 little GPTs, one for analyzing my own writing style, one for getting me from idea to first draft. And it's not necessarily that the AI is doing the writing, right? This is a collaborative process, but it helps me structure my thought process so that writing doesn't become such an onerous thing. And I can get that newsletter out every week and it feels fun, right? Because I can just like say, today I was walking down the street and I was thinking about birds and tell me, blah, 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 right? It's just a different way of thinking and learning. And what we have also seen, and the science tells us, is that we learn differently when we use AI. There's a researcher named Hope Schroeder at MIT. Hope's done research on the use of AI by social scientists. What she has found is that it doesn't make their work go faster, but it does help them absorb and understand the material they're studying better, right? And part of that is because you get to ask questions. You get to guide the conversation in a way that's meaningful to you and meaningful to the way that your brain processes information, which is going to be different than mine. And then lastly, everybody builds. So we use ChatGPT, we build a custom GPT. You can build one in 30 minutes. If you haven't already, you absolutely need to try it. It's a game changer. And we build them very specifically so we can think of them as like pre-agent level, right? AI agents are autonomous. They can do things without human in the loop. This is an application that does something with the human in the loop, but it systematizes it, right? So if you are always writing proposals, right? For me, I'm constantly giving people proposals on customized classes that I can do within their industry. I have trained a GPT on all of the classes that I've taught up until this point, some of my signature lessons. Just this morning, I had a legal team come to me, ask me for a proposal. I was able to work through that in an hour, which it probably would have taken me like 8 hours prior. Right? So I'm cutting down my time to do things almost by, I don't know, what is that, an order of magnitude, like a tenth of the time, right? To do a scope of work, like that's pretty amazing. Now I can go take a nap because I'm exhausted. It tires you out more. I think that's the other thing to realize is like your brain is working so hard and intensely while you're using AI that like you're ready to sleep in less than 8 hours. So maybe we need that siesta time reintroduced into our lives. All right. I will show you this. So in terms of best practices, I love what Moderna has done, and I don't represent any companies, so I'm not like pushing OpenAI. You could say this for anybody, but I really love how they've taken this technology and used it in a federated approach to train everybody in their company.
Very profoundly at Moderna that ChatGPT and what OpenAI is doing is going to change the world. We are really looking at every business process from legal to research to manufacturing to commercial and to think about how you redesign those processes with ChatGPT type tools.
90% of companies want to go do Gen AI, but only 10% of them are successful. They haven't built the mechanisms of actually transforming your workforce to adopt new technology and new capabilities. We've been born as a platform company, and we think about our drug development as a platform. And with the onset of enterprise ChatGPT, these GPTs became embedded into the workflows of how our users are really using it. We're up to now 400 GPTs within 2 months, far more than what we expected.
Okay, 400 GPTs within a few months, right? And I think by the time this video actually came out, they were up to 750. So think about that. That's like 400 individual solutions, but those solutions probably address use cases for more than just a single individual, right? So they basically have just developed like 400 different apps, right? And that's really the power of this technology at scale. It's being able to personalize those use cases, make things very easily without the need for a major development team. And then if you do find something that is a high use case that you want to consider, then you move into a buy or build stage, right? Then you can think about, how do I scale this? What's the right mechanism? And we can talk a little bit about how you do that. So I next wanted to just show you some of the humans that have taken my classes to make it a little bit more tangible what people walk away with. So these are 4 of my students, and as you can see, they are a diverse group of people. They come from all walks of life. I have had an intellectual property attorney, a women's health advocate, a social media market researcher, and a chief financial officer all in the same room, right? So part of this is also people learning from each other, right? I facilitate a conversation, but they learn not only from me, but from what they each do. And I'm going to start with Anne. Anne is a patent attorney, and what she wanted to do, each of these students built a GPT around a specific use case. She figured out that it takes her about 20 to 30 hours to do a patent application. And she really wanted to think about, where's the place in that process that is most valuable for her as a senior lawyer to be spending her time, right? So she broke down the process and she came up with a workflow, and she identified that the background section of a patent application is actually pretty pro forma. Mostly it would be done maybe by a student intern, possibly by a paralegal, and she would always have to read the section herself to be able to fact check it. So she built an application. She came up with a format for how that background section should be written. And you can basically say, okay, today I'm writing a patent application on golf clubs, and it will write the background section for you. And again, a first draft. You can always go back in, make edits, clarify, correct. With Dr. Barbara Roden, she specializes in Black women's health. And what she has found is that a lot of the information that's available on the internet for women about health issues, including something like endometriosis, is written on studies that were done on white women. In fact, many of the studies have not even been done on women. So she has original research that's been done on Black women and insights into what specific risks are for Black women. And so what she's done is she's trained her GPT with all her proprietary knowledge so that somebody can go on and query about endometriosis the same way that they might do a Google search, but this time they'll get information that is specifically about Black women's health. Next, we have Jay Bryan, and Jay is a social media market researcher. What Jay does is he does social listening. So he gathers all of the things that people say online. If you're working in a government agency, this is probably similar to all of the things that your constituents are talking about when they are complaining about problems they have with city services. And he usually does that analysis of what are the common themes, what are people talking about manually, right? And so it would take hours to gather the research, then it takes more hours to synthesize that research, and then he would present those insights to his client. he built an app that he can sit in real time with his client, still takes the time to gather the data, but he inputs that data into his GPT, and those insights come out automatically, and he can have a conversation in real time and even prompt differently for different kinds of questions his client might have, right? So he's really created an interactive experience about how we tell stories with data. And then lastly, I will share with you Riyab Babikar. Riyab is a chief financial officer, and you would think that there are plenty of financial applications to help Riyab do all the things that she needs to do with numbers. You know, ChatGPT, it's a language model. It's kind of notorious for not doing math well, but what it has is something called Code Interpreter, where it allows you to both write and read Python code. I teach a 2-hour Python class to people with no technical experience. I have taught myself how to read and write code using a large language model as an assistant within the past 2 years, right? So this does not need to be a foreign language. I do think coding is going to be a skill that everybody needs to know, not just a specialized group of programmers, because it is becoming more democratized. But Riyab took that 2-hour class and she's like, you know what? We need a cash flow projector. There's not really a good application out there that does this. And so every month she just feeds her last month's cash and what she's anticipating doing the next year, and she gets her cash flow projections for the next month. So those are just 4 examples. And what I like to just leave you with is that we do AI, right? The only way to learn about AI and implement AI is to do AI. So let's stop talking about AI and start doing AI. And lastly, I have a framework that I'm still developing. Would love to test it out with you if you guys are interested and curious. We can kind of do a little live demo if you're up for it. What I have found is, you know, once people go through this training program, they start developing the use cases themselves, right? They start to understand what the technology can do and where it might start strategically to fit into their organization. But the other question they start thinking about is, how does this change how we are organized, right? And what does the future of work look like for us? So I have built my own GPT around a framework that I call Sync, which is really my projections of how AI is going to impact us as a workforce. I have not yet rolled this out. I might do it in a LinkedIn newsletter, but you're all the first to see it. And this is the way that it goes. So one of the things that I have realized is that, you know, we've gone from hierarchical organizational structures, some matrix structures, but for the most part, I think most government entities pretty hierarchically organized, right? And so we're now looking at what I'll call a hub and spoke leadership method, where, you know, we want to make sure that, yes, we're maintaining major decision-making power with the elected officials or appointed representatives, but we also want to be able to distribute decision-making around things that individuals have more knowledge, experience, and frankly, control, and are more connected with the customers, right? More connected with the citizens to be able to make on-the-spot decisions. And AI can be a bridge for that. I also look at using AI as a teammate, right? So like really to think of it as like, you know, you have an AI assistant showing up to your meeting, they can write your meeting minutes, right? Like if we use an AI as a collaborative tool, like thinking of them as working alongside human workers. Again, never in a replacement mode, but always thinking of it in a collaborative mode. And then the next is a high touch workforce, right? So yes, there are a lot of things that AI can and will be able to do, but we as humans, we have agency. We get to make the choices, right? There might be some things we choose not to do. I'm going to say a chatbot that is like touching your customers is going to be one of those things you're going to want to think about really hard, right? It's the easiest application to think about. It's also the easiest one to go off the rails. And where do you want to have that high touch experience, right? Where do you want humans connecting with other humans? So really thinking critically about what are those parts of your job that you think you add the most value and being physically embodied and present for the people that you're serving. And then last, AI operations and optimization. You know, right now there's like probably not a chief AI officer in most organizations. Maybe that will be something in the future. We certainly are seeing that in the private sector. But I think what we want to do is really think about how all of those parts of AI are distributed, all those roles are distributed within your organization, right? Who's going to be responsible for the regulations, right, within your company? Who's going to be responsible for making sure the systems are updated? Who's going to be responsible for making sure that you've aligned things with your organizational goals, right? And that doesn't have to be one person. So just really thinking about and structurally how that happens for you. So that's the end of my talking. If you guys want to ask questions, more than happy to answer them. And also, if you want to test out the little GPT, we can run through one of your personal use cases and see how it goes.
Well, this is fascinating. I want to ask a question, and if anybody else has questions too, feel free to jump in here. On the idea of strategy, right? No strategy needed necessarily to do that. And yet at the same time, there's a little bit something there. I think the Moderna clip mentioned it about having the right mechanisms for implementing AI. How do we balance those two things together?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing I talk about with people is this creating a safe playground. And I always start by saying, like, I'm going to take you through this 10-hour course. And I have no expectation that by the end of this, you are going to implement AI in your company. You may get through this course and decide, actually, this is not the right technology for us, right? Or it's like good in these places, but it's not good in these places. So I think like creating an educational environment is like the big missing link. And still, you know, even some of the biggest companies in the world are not creating training budgets, right? This is a big shift, right? And so, you know, I know that I'm preaching to the choir on this call, and you're not preaching to the choir, right? I know that you're all AI savvy. So, you know, I think that's the most important thing is just like, let's just try it. Let's just try it out, right? Let's try and break it, right? Let's see what happens. Like, what's the worst case that's going to happen? And also, like, our citizens are using this, right? What's their expectation going to be of how we serve them, right? If they now, like, rather than Googling something or going on ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or, you know, Perplexity to find their information, right? Are we discoverable there? Right? This is also like the new SEO, right? Are people getting the right information from those sources about the services that we provide? So yeah, I think that like getting that training message in early is really important. Then strategy, right? I'm not saying no strategy. I'm just saying stop thinking about strategy first before you start educating yourself.
Yeah, great point. And then other thing too is on the idea you mentioned. I thought your point there on chatbots at the end there about not just, you know, in the fire service, there's a phrase called chasing the zebra, which is kind of chasing that elusive thing that doesn't exist, right? And so how do we avoid kind of the traditional way, I think, of how local government procurement works is you go to this conference, you talk to this representative, they have this really cool thing they show you, your buddy in a neighboring city buys that thing, and then they come to you and you're saying, okay, I have to buy this because my buddy down the street has it now too, right? And that's the case for almost every kind of government procurement, and it's half-hearted, but unfortunately it's more reality than we care to admit. How do we avoid kind of the FOMO and chasing the dragon of doing all the different things and really thinking through what's best for our residents and where do we need to have that high degree of human touch and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, the reason that I start with teaching some of these foundational tools, and I'm not going to call them applications because they're not products, right? I think this is a really important thing to recognize, is we are in a moment where we're all part of the beta test, right? It used to be that companies released, you know, software on a floppy disk, or, you know, even in modern era when it's like cloud-based, you got a release, right? And then, you know, an updated release. But now we're in a perpetual set of feature developments, additions, augmentations, right? And of all of the tools you can use, I would say Anthropic's Claude and ChatGPT show the widest breadth of everything that is possible with large language models, right? And then if we get into, you know, images, I'm going to say probably like Adobe and Stable Diffusion and Midjourney on the creative side, right? Probably less so within the work that you do, but certainly within creative agencies, like those are the game-changing applications. Runway, Pika on the video side. But I think that anything beyond that are companies that are basically integrating, and they do this through an API, right? That's made available either through an open source, which means that you don't pay for the model, but you do pay for electricity, right? And you pay for a server to run that model. So it's not free entirely. Or closed source, which is a company that's like proprietary, not going to share their data. Anthropic and OpenAI would be two of those. So yeah, I think that, you know, a lot of people overlook the power of those applications and immediately jump to the ones that the salespeople are going to push in those conferences. And I'm going to tell you, you can probably do 90% of the things that they are telling you with these generic applications. And when you can't, that's when you really want to make that strategic buy or build decision. And you know, I've got a good matrix, which kind of looks at the combination of IP, right? How much IP is involved in what you want to do? How complex is your data, right? And to make a determination about whether or not you want to, you know, outsource to a third party or whether you want to build something and operate it on premises, right? And that's going to be different for every use case, but.
Yeah, thank you. That's really, really helpful, I think, as we navigate this new world. And I don't see any hand raised for right now. So I think I would love to see the kind of work through the GPT you're talking. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard a voice. So was someone trying to say something here? Thought I heard some, but maybe my my ears are ringing. So, but if you are one of the listeners here listening by way of our 60,000 views on YouTube or 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel, feel free to put your comments below and ask your questions. I'll make sure those get routed over to Lori as well too, and would love to engage with you all via that as well too. So if you don't feel like you can't ask questions on this, and the cool thing about social media is time and space are not barriers to asking questions and learning from each other. So I want to encourage that as well too. So Lori, would love to kind of walk through the GPT example. I'm extremely intrigued. I love building GPTs myself. I'm not quite to the 400 level that Moderna is at, but I think about 40 right now that I'm working on for everything from, you know, food planning for groceries and stuff like that to personal study or just, you know, fun, you know, during baseball season, trying to track what my favorite team was doing and how they were going. So all over the board, it's really incredible. But yeah, would love to do that.
Amazing. Okay, so this will require some participation. So Micah, if you want to be the guinea pig, maybe we use you and everybody else can run with it. And I'm also going to see if I have made this public. Yeah, so this is my back end, just so that you can see how these things work, right? This is not magic, okay? There are very few instructions that go into running this. Basically, I came up with this framework, which I just reviewed with you, and I am going to have the GPT take us through a series of questions, right? So this is really just like, think of it like a different way of doing a questionnaire, right? But it's just going to prompt you. And then at the end, it's going to deliver us a report if it does its job well. Sometimes, you know, it goes a little wacko. But I'm going to share this with you. I will make this, public, and I'm going to copy the link and I'm going to put it in the chat so that if you want to try this out on your own, go for it. Unfortunately, I don't get feedback, but feel free if you use this to like shoot me an email on LinkedIn and like give me some feedback. I also like negative feedback, so you know, don't feel like you're gonna hurt my feelings. All right. Take a little time to save today.
Still catching up with daylight savings time over there. That's what that is. Yeah.
All right. I don't believe it that it failed to update, so we're gonna use it anyways. Okay, so when you build a GPT, you can give up to 4 conversation starters, right? That's basically just telling your user how they can use this application. I'm just gonna start with one. I'm ready to begin applying sync to my industry. Okay, and it's gonna ask me a bunch of questions. So Micah, you wanna answer them for me and I will type your responses. What
All
industry
right.
in?
Okay, we are in the local government industry,
Okay,
and we have a hierarchical structure.
okay,
So for this, I think for this one here, we'll do the key roles is a city manager. Let's also add in IT,
yeah,
and let's do community enrichment.
okay. And AI tools and processes, do you have any in process already?
So a lot of this is going to be using ChatGPT and open source tools like that for report writing and data analytics.
All right. All right, we're going to take this
Hmm.
question by question. Who currently makes the decisions in your organization?
So a lot of the decision making is made by a team supervisor or the department director.
Okay. And is it strictly top down or do teams have autonomy in decision making?
Teams have autonomy in decision making with some budgetary left and right limits.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And in which areas could AI further reduce manual workloads beyond report writing analytics? Are there any other processes where AI could provide support? So any use cases that you've thought of that you're curious about?
So the one I'm most curious about right now is how AI can help out with body-worn camera redaction processes and help records services within police departments speed up their work to be more transparent.
Okay, you said body worn camera redactions.
Yeah,
Okay, and the second one again?
just generically within the records departments for police departments, speeding up those processes. That way we can process information requests or things like that in a more efficient manner.
Awesome. Okay. And high touch, high capability workforce. Which roles in your organization are best suited for AI automation and which require human creativity or emotional intelligence?
So this is an interesting one. I think that specifically the police department is best suited for AI automation, but at the same time require a high level of emotional intelligence and that human touch, right? Because I can't have an AI bot go in the park and play soccer with the kids, but if I can take stuff off the officers' plates using AI tools, enables them to go and do that community engagement.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't worry about spelling, because AI can miraculously like read my misspellings.
My favorite features of AI is
Who
that
cares?
all the work my mother did to help me spell is now out the window.
I know. It's terrible. Okay, and now we're last at AI operations. Do you currently have anyone managing your AI tools? Or if not, who could potentially take on this role, or could a new position be created? I'm not even gonna say could a new position be created, because I know you're all like starving for budgets here. So yeah, who could take on this role on top of the Thanksgiving plate they already have?
Yes. Yeah. So right now we manage this through just basically empowering and holding our team members accountable for what they're doing and saying we hire you for a reason, so we trust that you can do a good job with AI.
Okay, super. I think that is the end of our questionnaire. Let's see how we did. Now, for each one, it's going to ask us if we want to go deeper, right? And so we always can do that. If we wanted to, for example, we talked mostly in this about those body-worn cameras and records management. I want to ask it, and you can always highlight and reply, so you don't have to like cut and paste. Can you give us some more ideas within this organization of use cases as a team player? It has lots of ideas on this.
Yeah, it's fascinating too, and even some of the ideas that it's bringing up are things that either I've talked specifically with my team on to give ideas, or other other police chiefs have mentioned to me things that they're doing. So it's highly relevant too. It's not just spitting out random ideas. It's actually very, very relevant to this use case, this idea.
Absolutely. And you can always say, and I'm going to just do this as an example, you don't have to agree with the recommendations you're given, right? This is not an omniscient force here. It's one that we can interact with. So I'm just going to say here, it's really important to us that this be high touch. Right. Just now, I am going to rush through this, and I'll give you a copy of the conversation after we're done if you want to review any of the recommendations. But at this point, I'm going to say this is excellent work. These machines work best when you do give them feedback.
Yeah.
Now, can you write up the report? Don't worry. I have it so that it will make a Word document, but that takes a little longer. Don't worry about a Word document. Okay.
This is really fascinating too. When you're building the GPT as well, one thing I noticed you've seen the same thing is you can actually use Chat GPT to help you build GPTs and kind of come up with ideas of how to do this too. So, you've done a phenomenal job putting this together, but I hope people watching or listening to this call right now understand that you can actually do this on your own with just a simple idea and put it into ChatGPT and actually, create the whole thing for you from scratch too. And yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, all it takes is language and a question, and you can have a conversation and get everything that you need for that instruction section. And even within the GPT builder part of the interface, there are two sides to it. One is called, I think, configure. That's where you
Mhm.
can fill in the blanks if you're somebody who prefers to work in that behind the scenes format, or you can just have a conversation, right?
Mhm.
And talk through what you want to build. So yeah, I think here this just demonstrates, right? It can take a process, it can then apply it to a specific application. You can go back and forth and have a conversation. And then in the end, it can produce a report that you could literally take and have a conversation with your manager about, right?
Yeah.
And I will show you just my new favorite thing to do. I'm just going to copy this whole last section. If you have not tried this out yet, super fun. I'm going to take this over to the canvas and I'm going to say, let's do some editing on this document. The canvas is, you could think of it more like Copilot, where it's actually going to develop a sidebar application for us when it works. Okay, here we go.
Wow.
Sometimes it takes a little extra nudging. But what's really great about this is, it's going to take a little while to write it, but this is actually editable. So you can go in, you can line edit. You can also ask it to just fix a specific section, right? So you don't have to go through that process every time of it fixing things, right? So I can say, change the title to be more exciting. Right.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I didn't know you could do that. I've seen the Canvas stuff before, and to be honest with you, I was kind of like it's fine. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I've never used it in this
Yeah.
way. So this is really cool.
Yeah, it's just fun in terms of being able to go from that first draft to fine-tuning and editing with a combination of your own editing that you would normally do in Word or Google Sheets and Docs. So
Yeah, incredible. Lori, thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join a couple of us local government AI nerds and talk about this. Super, super helpful. Excited to share this with the rest of the network too as well. I know they're going to get a lot out of this, just like we did here on this call. So thank you again, and for just learning a lot with you. And folks, please feel free. I'm sure Lori has no problem with this too. Go and follow her on LinkedIn. She's just an incredible resource of information. So you're missing out if you're not following her, and you're going to get some really good, valuable insights from her as well too. And take a look at her course offerings, other things like that. I'm going to look at the Python you mentioned. I got to get brushed up on that kind of thing, so I might be registering for that course here shortly, so I can learn how to do those different types of Python calls or codes there.
Absolutely.
So thank you again for joining us. Really, really, really appreciate your time and the effort you put into this.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
All right, guys, thanks again for joining us here today. Please feel free to share this content with everyone that you know who might benefit from this. And thank you to each one of you who stay on the call and join us live for this discussion. Until next time, be well.